Today is Thursday, February 3rd, year 2000, and it's my pleasure to be with Keri Silvyn, a 1997 graduate of the University of Arizona, James E. Rogers College of Law. I am Vicki Fleischer, here to interview Keri. So Keri, let's start out with some basic questions. Can you tell us why you decided to go to law school?
Well, I didn't really decide to go to law school. I've known since I was about 2 years old that it was something that I really wanted to do. My father's a lawyer, my uncle's a lawyer, my grandfather is versed in the legal language. He's not actually trained as an attorney. And it was just always something that, you start out as a child saying you want to be whatever it is your father is. And I started doing that at the age of 2, and it just never went away. And I think the first indication was probably, according to my parents, and parents always love to tell stories, the first words that I ever spoke were res ipsa loquitur, because Dad thought that was hysterical to have a 2-year-old walking around.
You must have spent a lot of time with your dad.
Listening
to his legal Latin lingo.
Obviously. So it was not an overly rational decision. It was sort of something I was always going to do.
And did your family members go to Arizona?
No. My father graduated from Drake in Iowa, and I don't actually know where my uncle went. But no, none of my family was schooled in Arizona actually until me.
And why did you decide to go there?
I did my undergrad work at the U of A, and one of the reasons I decided to come to law school at the U of A is because it was a choice between ASU and U of A, and having done my undergraduate work at the U of A, that part of it was sort of a no-brainer.
Yay!
And I really had heard great things about the faculty and the staff, and I had actually developed a really good relationship with Terry Holbert, who is currently the Dean of Admissions, and was when I was there, and we really kept in touch, and she's good at selling you on the school, so
Good, she does a great
that's
job.
why I came to U of A.
How many students were in your class?
I believe I had around, in my small section or in my...
Both.
In my actually U of A class, I think it was close to 140, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
My small section, we had between 25 and 30.
Who was your small section teacher?
Professor Ayers.
Lucky lady. What were your classmates like?
They came from very different backgrounds. All of my classmates were very unique. Some had higher education degrees, some came straight from school, some had just taken time after a bachelor's degree and had other careers. It really varied, which made the experience much more fulfilling to have people from different backgrounds in discussions.
Great. This may sound kind of silly to ask, but I'm curious, and I assume people will be in the future. Of your classmates, if you had a guess, how many do you think were women?
I would say close to half of my classmates were women.
Mm-hmm. It's a big change from some other people you've interviewed in
Yeah.
the past. And were there a lot of minorities in your class?
Yes, there were. I have no idea what the number of minorities were in my class, but we had a good number. I would say probably about a third of the class, and that's definitely a guess. But it was interesting because, as I said, people came from various backgrounds, and that's what made it such a neat experience. And it was particularly having minorities in the class made discussions much more interesting, because they're people from various backgrounds and upbringings and different social values, and that made it much more colorful.
Great. Were most of the students in your class from Arizona?
I would say yes. Most of the students from my class were from Arizona, but I don't know for sure. And a lot of us had traveled for some time between, or gone other places between undergrad and going to law
Mm-hmm.
school. So it was never really clear to me who was, a resident and really from Arizona, and who who was actually here from out of state, and this was their first experience in Arizona. Most of my classmates had been in Arizona for some time, whether it be long enough to obtain residency or not. But most were familiar with Arizona, in particular Tucson.
Great. If you started with, let's say, 140 students your first day of orientation, how many graduated with you?
I believe almost our entire class graduated with me. It wasn't the traditional law school first day experiences, look to your right, look to your left, and only one of you will be left. That was not done, and that did not occur. We only had a few people from my class transfer, and I don't believe we had anybody. If we did, it was only one or two people actually drop out of law school. There was a real concerted effort by staff and professors to make sure that everybody was doing okay emotionally. Obviously, there's only so much you can do about grades, but emotionally, and that if somebody was going to make the decision, to make sure it was a well thought out decision to either transfer or to drop out. But I believe we had almost. I think we actually had the same number because we had some people transfer in, but it was not a number that I would have known about anyways.
Right, great.
So.
Was there summer school when you were in law school?
There was summer school when I was in law school. I didn't take any classes in summer school.
Did most students?
I think it depended on the student's goals. I think we had, I may have taken one summer school class now that I think about it, but not very many. A lot of people wanted to either play between summers and take advantage of the fact they were in school and actually get 3 months off. Others wanted to take the opportunity to get some experience. The ones that were trying to get themselves through school faster, or for some reason needed to take family commitments or whatever, to take lighter loads during the semesters, were the ones who tended to take summer school.
Mm-hmm. You're familiar with the clinical programs, I know, at the law school.
Yes, I am.
You've been a great supporter. Did you participate in any of the clinics when you were in school?
I did participate in the clinics while I was in school. I did mine with the city prosecutor's office.
Can you tell us about that?
It was a great experience. It was my first jury trial. I did a DUI. And and I won. It was amazing, being able to work with somebody who's in the profession, and under their guidance be able to make all the mistakes you want. You have the excuse of you're a law student, and this is your first one. And it was it was great to take everything that I'd learned in the classroom from evidence and some civil procedure and put it to practical use, and to be able to do that while you're still in law school, so that you can see how it works out. As long as the clinicals are still around, which I hope they will be, encourage everybody to do at least one.
Great. What other student activities did you participate in when you were in law school?
I participated in a few different activities. I was on the journal, and I took a leadership role on it's the Journal of International Comparative Law. I was the research and development editor, which, as some people said, was the party planner, which is probably why I enjoyed it so much. And really did try and take a leadership role in that, and that was a lot of fun. I had some involvement with the SBA, Student Bar Association. I also did a lot with the Law Women's Association, the student organization, and that was a great experience in meeting people outside of already in the legal profession. There are those connections that are made. I think those were the 3 organizations I pretty much highlighted and got involved in. And then any organization that had any sort of event where there were going to be people from the Tucson community or the Phoenix community there, to get to meet and get to know some people and hear about their experiences, I usually took advantage of.
Sounds like a good opportunity. Were there any faculty student activities?
The faculty student activities that I remember were the picnic at the very beginning, And then we did a lot with Professor Ayers. Really makes a concerted effort to get to know everybody in his small section really well, and we did a lot of that. There were picnics, I believe, throughout the year, maybe one or two that we had with the faculty. I'm a people person, so I don't like being unknown in a class. That does not mean I raise my hand the first day of class, because I learned that lesson quickly. But I did visit the faculty and the professors during their office hours to ask questions, and just so that they could get to know me and I could get to know them a little bit. And they were very, very accessible. So in other words, if there were, what I guess I'm trying to say is, I don't remember there being a lot of organized activities with professors and with faculty, but there were enough that you could get to know faces, and then they were always available if you needed to speak with them, and I was usually doing that.
Great. So now we're going to move to something I think that you can tell us more about. Students. Were there any married students in law school?
Yes, there were married students in law school. I was not one of them when I was in law school. I did not get married until I got out.
But you met someone in law school, right?
I met him while I was in law school, but he had already graduated.
Oh, okay.
And he actually went to UCLA and was a lawyer in the community. Yes, there were a number of people who were married, a number who had children, which always boggled my mind when I thought my life was stressful and what I was doing was stressful. I kept thinking about were the people that were going home to infants and children's and carpooling, and all of a sudden my life looked much easier.
Yeah, good to keep it in perspective. Where did most of your classmates live when they were in law school?
Most of my classmates while I was in law school lived in apartments or in homes near the campus. There are a lot of homes for rent. There were, and some were living with their parents, depending on if they were originally from Tucson. Mm-hmm. But a good majority, actually, I think most of the people that I knew were renting homes with other graduate students or law students.
Mm-hmm. Okay, law school's over. You're graduated. What was the bar exam like?
The bar exam is an experience.
I've heard you discuss this before.
It's something you just got to get through, and you buckle down, and you have stressful moments, and you have moments where you feel like there's no question you're going to pass it, and those moments tend to be few and far between. Majority of the moments are, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? The nice thing about it, and what I gained a lot of momentum and help with, is that there were so many other people going through the same emotional ups and downs. And I think because the U of A Law School didn't foster a competitive environment, I graduated with law school being friends with most of the people that I graduated with. So when we were going through this, it was much easier to go through it together, and there was no sense of you can't talk about how stupid you feel and the subject of real property because, oh my God, they're going to think that I'm an idiot, and I don't think I am. There was a sense of I can be honest with everybody, and we can talk through problems and get it worked out. And I think that's the only good thing about the bar exam. The other good thing about it, I felt, as sick as this may sound, was it gives you, studying for the bar exam and getting into all of those subjects, gives you a true understanding, or an overall understanding of various areas of law in the state of Arizona, to the point where when you're in practice, you know enough to know that you don't know enough, but you know enough to be able to sort of have an idea of where to start and what the topic is and what the issue is, because you've spent all of this time learning enough about Arizona law to know the issues, and then to know you don't know enough to answer the question. But that's why you're a lawyer, because you know where to go find the answers. So it was, in retrospect, it's a good thing, and I'm not sure. I've already told my husband we're never moving, because I'm never taking another bar exam again.
To that feeling. What were the job prospects like after you finished the bar exam after school?
The job prospects after school when I graduated were actually pretty good. I don't remember what our placement was, but most people who truly needed to and wanted to find a job could. The people who were picky about the firms they wanted to be at and the places they wanted to be, either geographically or particular firms, had a harder time. But I think that happens no matter what the job market is like. I really don't remember that. There's always a lot of frustration, the people, because of the way that hiring is done. The people at the top of their class get jobs in the big firms, no questions asked, and then the rest of us are scrounging around for anything we can get our hands on, and that's okay. And there was enough to get your hands on when I graduated that it wasn't a problem.
What did some of your classmates do after law school, besides the big firm jobs? Are you aware of some people doing some interesting work?
Most of my friends after law school ended up getting jobs with firms. I obviously don't have very interesting friends. Some went back to previous careers they had. They just wanted the legal background in order to be more well-rounded, and then went back to careers. Had one, she actually graduated a year behind me. She went to a firm and is now a lawyer for the Nature Conservancy, because that's been her big thing. She always wanted to do that. She, after a year at a firm, decided that it was time to pursue that. And I'm hearing now that I've been out for 3 years, more people that are with big firms, or even just with regular law firms, are trying to decide what it is they truly want to do, because they've discovered that this ain't it. And they're creating their own opportunities and doing different things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk specifically about some of your classes at law school. Other than your small section, just the upper, let's say second and third year classes, about how many people were in your classes?
Second and third year classes, I think we probably had maybe double or triple the amount that was in my small section, so it would have been, actually, I think they were close to about 100. It truly depended on the class. I mean, there were classes that were, the curriculum is recommended, Con Law 2, a couple other classes that everybody, estates and trusts, those kinds of things that tend to be bigger. But if you got into, I took federal Indian law, and we only had about 20 people in the class. It was pretty much the equivalent of a small section. Family law didn't have quite as many as some of the other ones. I think it really does depend on the class. And then I took a couple of seminars that were only about 10 or 15 people. And people who like smaller classes could arrange their schedule so that they were in the smaller classes. And people who liked the larger classes could do the same. So it was a variety.
So give me an example of some of the subjects that would have been the smaller type of classes you're talking about.
The smaller type of classes would have been classes like federal Indian law, family law. I took, we're required to take the ethics course, and there's always a seminar, or there was always a seminar offered that was a smaller, for people who weren't on the journal or the law review. If you were going to write a substantial paper, that was a smaller class. The trial practice class, they try and split everybody up into smaller sections with practitioners who actually teach the classes, or judges or lawyers. Those are the only ones I can think of right now that were smaller.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite class?
That's a tough question. My favorite class was probably three, for three very different reasons. Family law and federal Indian law, because at the time I took those two classes, those were the areas of law that I was going to practice. And people all the way throughout law school would ask me, what area of law do you want to practice? And it always depended on whatever class I was taking. Federal Indian law, I wrote my article for the journal on the Indian Child Welfare Act. And so I took federal Indian law to help get a broader basis of understanding to write the article. And I really enjoyed the class. It was a tough class, but interesting. Professor Williams. it was an interesting class, and it was really, really great. Family law I enjoyed because I really liked the subject, and that was my first revelation that I could never practice family law, because at the time I was engaged to my husband, and I came home from 2 of the classes, or actually I was studying for them, and I came back from the library absolutely bawling. And he looked at me, he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "These are so sad." And he looked at me, he said, "Okay, if you're going to cry like this while you're reading the cases and you have no vested interest in the people," he said, "you are never going to practice family law." I really enjoyed the subject, but I'm glad I took the class, because it really made me see that I can't divorce myself from, no pun intended, from the cases and the people, and it wasn't going to be a class for me. And then con law too, because Tony Massaro taught it. So it was the subject matter as well as, and probably more, the teacher than it was the subject matter.
Great. How much reading did you have per class?
The amount of reading I had per class really varied depending on the class. First year, it felt like a lot of reading, and I think that's just because you felt like you had to read every single thing for every single class. And by third year, you get a little bit smart about that, and you realize that's not the case. Of course, Professor Ayers would kill me if he heard me say that.
We won't let him listen to this.
The first year definitely felt like it was way more reading. It was, put it this way, I didn't need glasses before I went into law school. By the time I came out from law school, I needed to be wearing glasses, and the doctor actually said it was because of the amount of reading that I was doing. It's substantial.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it, and I think those students who had practiced and taken classes in speed reading and speed comprehension were much better off than me, who had to read every single word and underline it and highlight it.
Professors would love to hear that.
Yeah.
What were your exams like? Were they verbal? Were they written?
My
Choice?
exams were all either multiple choice or essay, and any combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. How long were they?
The length of the exam also varied. Most of the exams they gave us 3 or 4 hours to do, and I was not one of the first people to get up and leave. I was usually the one the professor's ripping out of my hands as the time is ticking. They really, most of them were essays. Some had a multiple choice component to it. I only had, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 that were completely multiple choice. And I actually found those to be more difficult.
Really?
Because you could always narrow it down to 2, and then it was really...
It's like the bar exam, which one's the better answer?
Exactly like the bar exam.
Well, they're preparing you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we've heard the term Socratic before. Did you see a lot of Socratic method teaching when you were in law school?
Professor Ayers is the king of the Socratic method of teaching. He was really, most of the professors chose to call on people who had their hands up. There were very few that I think took the Socratic method to its ultimate end, which is just to pick on people, and you had no idea you were going to be picked on. Professor Ayers liked the picking on people, and that was always interesting. But yes, I mean, there's no question that the questions are posed to the students, and you need to think about it and figure it out. It was less intimidating than I had expected, and I experienced Professor Ayers' class in a small section, which just by its nature makes it a little bit less intimidating, because most of us then knew each other because we had had a couple of social events, and there were only 20 of us, so if you sounded stupid, it was okay. Everybody either already knew you were or knew you weren't, depending on the person.
Okay, so you just mentioned you had some social activities. Tell me about the social life at the law school, and maybe off campus as well.
I really enjoyed the social life at the law school. I had a lot of friends in law school that I've maintained contact with. I was friendly with almost everybody in my class and in the school. There's always a core group, I think, or there was always a core group in every class who were the partiers and hosted the parties and planned them. I wasn't really the host or the planner of any of the parties. I just attended. My roommate and I planned a couple of parties, but ours tended to be like the wine tasting and tended to attract the more uppity people on school versus the keggers and the let's all meet at a bar. But I pretty much went to most of them. It was a great way to wind down, and you see a whole other side of the group of people that are really working hard. And I think, the working hard and playing hard philosophy of life sort of comes out in law school, and people do that. There were also a whole group of people who had families, and so going to a kegger or going to a wine party is not something that they're going to do on a Friday or Saturday night, but there was socializing between classes and going to lunches and doing things that they could fit into their normal day that didn't require, taking any more time away from their family, that we all enjoyed as well.
Great. What was graduation like?
Graduation was somewhat anticlimactic. It was a great feeling, but the bar was so fundamentally looming, because the bar exam for us started, I think, 4 or 5 days after graduation, so there wasn't much of a vacation, and you had just finished signing up and getting the books, and so they were sitting at home in your living room, and it was a great experience, and it was a phenomenal accomplishment, but there definitely was the aura of you're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
You're getting there, but you're not quite there.
You graduated law school, but you can't practice law yet.
Exactly.
Okay, tell me about the faculty when you were in law school.
The faculty when I was in law school were incredible. Everybody was supportive, understanding, and like I said, I'm the type of person to try and get to know people rather than just being a name on a roster. So I got to know a majority of my professors, and I think that enhanced the experience for me, just because I got to know them better than most people did. But they were always accessible. I mean, even if some of the professors are not the type of warm, fuzzy people who want to reveal much about their life or care much about yours, but they were always available if you had a question and if you were in need of an answer substantively, and we're very open to talking. Now, all like to talk about whatever subject it is they teach.
Right.
It was a neat environment.
Who were your favorite professors?
That's a loaded question. Who were my favorite professors?
You've graduated, it's okay.
Definitely Professor Ayers and Professor Massaro and Professor Atwood would probably be the three that come to my mind immediately.
Why?
Partly because those were three people that I got to know. They were the more warm, fuzzy people that I got to know a little bit better, and was able to talk to them about other life things going on at the time I was in law school. It wasn't restricted to questions and answers on their subjects. They were also very willing to listen to my ideas on particular subjects. As much as I love to talk, I don't overly love volunteering myself in class. I don't know whether it's a fear of sounding stupid or what, but I enjoy a one-on-one much better, and they were very willing to do that and do some give and take, understanding that there are some people who just don't like to speak in a big classroom setting, and which is interesting because as much as I love public speaking, which I do, I did not like the idea of volunteering myself in class. But they were by far my three most favorite, and I think it is because I got to know them on a more personal level.
Who was the dean when you were in law school?
The dean when I was in law school, it was a combination of Sullivan and Seligman.
What do you remember about them?
I did not have much interaction with the deans. Sullivan, I just remember always being out of his office. He was always in the area in front of the library and talking to students and really interacting. Dean Seligman had just, actually he was there for a majority of my law school career, and he was incredible in a political sense. He was always schmoozing with the right people, and I know just doing great things for raising money and that sort of stuff for the law school. He wasn't as interactive with the students, and I think because I was there during the transition, that bothered a lot of students. Because I didn't have much interaction with either of them, it was neither here nor there for me. I had one instance where I needed a question answered in the subject that Dean Seligman taught, and he made an arrangement for me to come in a timely manner. He knew what my deadline was, and he said that's fine, and he sat and he talked with me until I understood it, which is saying a lot for securities and me. So I mean, the experiences that I've had with him have been phenomenal.
Great. Okay, speaking of loaded questions, here they come. So, what was the most interesting thing that happened at the college when you were in law school?
The most interesting thing that happened in the college while I was in law school. I don't know.
Okay.
Go back to that. What?
So this is the part we can edit.
Okay, good.
What was going on in the world at that time?
You know, it's funny, when you're in law school, you have no idea what's going on in the world at the time you're in law school. Trying to think of what would be interesting to people.
All I remember is the Persian Gulf War was going on when I was in law school, and that's it. So,
Yeah.
only because it was on television constantly. Yeah, I agree with you. It's hard to know.
I really don't remember anything exciting that was going on.
Okay. When you got out of law school, did you feel prepared to practice law?
When I got out of law school, I did not feel prepared to practice law. I thought I was prepared to practice law until I actually started practicing. And I don't think anything can prepare you except for the actual experience of it. And once you're comfortable with the fact that your first year of practice you're going to feel stupid on a daily basis, then you're fine. By the time you've been practicing for a little over a year, you all of a sudden have this revelation that you really do know what you're doing, and that even if you don't know what you're doing when a question comes in, you're much more comfortable saying, that's a very good question, let me research that and get back to you. Whereas when you do it your first year of law school, you have the sense of, I'm an idiot, even though it's a completely acceptable answer. Mm-hmm. And actually most clients would prefer it, because if you can answer off the top of your head, there's some question as to whether you're making it up or you really know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But there is no substitute for experience, which is why I think the clinical programs are so important, because it gives you that experience before you get out, and you have a sense of how stupid you're going to feel, and that it's okay because there's enough people around you that are experienced enough that they can help you out, and no question is a stupid question.
What would you say is a defining characteristic of the U of A Law School?
Defining characteristic of the U of A Law School, I think, would be truly the faculty and the staff. I obviously have no basis of comparison because I didn't go to any other law school, but I have friends who have, and the individual attention and the accessibility of the faculty and the desire from the faculty to make sure that everybody is okay in law school, and that everyone's has different experiences. Some are good and some are not so good, but to make sure that it's an okay experience for everybody, preferably a better experience than okay, but helping through problems and helping find solutions to whatever problems arise, whether they be personal or with the school. But I do think that the faculty and staff are definitely better than most schools. I'd say better than all, but that
No,
would
let's
be
say
going
that.
too far.
Okay, so it's a wonderful faculty and staff, but there has to be something about legal education that you would change. So what is it?
The fact you have to do it. And now hindsight's always 20/20, and when I was in law school, what I would have changed in law school was the amount of stress I was under. But I think I always assumed that was imposed by other people, and what I came to realize now that I've looked back on it is that it really was self-imposed. So I could have alleviated that if I had wanted to. And because of that, I'm not sure that there's really anything within the legal education that needs to change. I know that right now faculty and staff are trying to make all the students understand that not everybody can be at the top of the class, and that it's really okay, and it doesn't, even though for the last 20 some odd years people have defined, when you're in law school, if you went straight through, you defined yourself based on your grades. It's not the defining factor anymore. It's really arbitrary. I think if there's a way to take the grades out of it, and I don't know if there really is because of the hiring practices of firms, I think that would benefit the mental health of most of the people in law school. And that's the part of it that I think the few people that I saw that had problems in law school, and I being one of them, the grades were the big clincher, and it just made you feel like you weren't worthy and you were stupid, and oh my God, how could this have happened? And I think that if that could change, it did. Actually, getting back to one of the questions that I skipped on you, that one of the more interesting things that happened at the law school, our grade curve changed while I was in law school. We went from, I don't remember exactly what happened, but basically rather than most of the grades being C's, they all became B's. And there were a lot of people who were upset. Most of those people were the people at the top of the class who didn't want to see their standing infiltrated. Those of us that would have liked B's rather than C's it just made a lot of sense. It didn't do, I don't think it did much to the people who were at the top of their class, but it brought the self-esteem of a lot of the people who didn't get good grades up, because you were seeing B's, which were okay to handle, whereas I think a majority of us in our undergrad careers never saw a C. And so when we saw one, it was, the most horrible thing that's ever happened to us. But I think that was probably one of the best things that the U of A did, and I think a better thing would be to completely get rid of grades. But I know there's a majority of people or a lot of people who disagree with me on that.
Oh, now's your time to say so.
Yeah. I've got a microphone and a camera on
There you go. If you were going to convey a message to future law students, what would it be, Keri?
I would tell future law students to relax and enjoy the experience. People told me that, and they're only going to do it if they really want to do it. I didn't take it to heart, and I really did enjoy law school. I enjoyed the social part of it. I enjoyed the people that I met. I enjoyed the classes once I relieved myself of the whole hang-up on grades. But particularly first year of law school, although you're hearing from people, relax, enjoy, you're also hearing, oh my God, your first year grades, those are the ones that count. You'll never get a job if you don't get good grades your first year. That's not the case. You will. And if you can relax and enjoy it, it's a great way to interact with really intelligent classmates and professors. And if you relax and just take all that in, it's a much better experience.
What would you like to see the law school accomplish in the future?
I'd like to see the law school increase its clinical programs and do more with that. I think it's important for the students, and right now the clinical classes are designated in just very limited areas of the law. There are areas of the law that need volunteer work, and I think that that's definitely important. But if people aren't interested in those areas of the law, they tend to shy away from the clinical program. And I think if we could somehow give people with different interests the ability to participate in some sort of clinical, maybe not a technical clinical program, but pairing up with an attorney who practices in the area of law and doing some work for that attorney, and maybe shadowing, going to court if it's a trial attorney, or going to a closing if it's a transactional attorney, but doing something like that so there's more exposure to the real world while you're in law school, because I think that helps put it in perspective.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Thank you very much.